So the theme of today's event is junior doctors getting heard. Now, we all remember the junior doctor contract dispute. Like England in the World Cup, it went very well in some ways, but they didn't win it. And we'd like to host a debate now with an expert panel of junior doctors to just consider whether or not junior doctors really got their voices heard during the junior doctor dispute. So if I could ask the panel to come up and get in position, and we're going to play a video.
I looked after a cancer patient. She was dying from her breast cancer. I think she'd given up. We discovered that she'd actually graduated from university just before coming in, and that her graduation ceremony was coming up. The entire team that were looking after her made it our mission over the next 2 weeks to get her out of bed, get her walking, get her spirits up, and take her to her graduation ceremony. There was a little lift up onto the stage, and as her name was read out, she took the oxygen mask off and walked the 20 metres across the stage, picked up her certificate, and came back to the wheelchair. The crowd went ballistic. I've never seen anything like it, except in a Hollywood film. It was incredible. She was very breathless, but she'd done it. I took her back to the hospital, and she died 2 weeks later. I'm Tom. I am a junior doctor.
The term junior doctor is misleading. Junior doctors are fully qualified professionals working in the NHS for up to 10 to 15 years on their way to becoming consultants and GPs. There are 53,000 junior doctors working in the NHS. The government threatens to impose a new contract on junior doctors that will damage the future of the NHS and harm the quality of care patients receive. Currently, hospitals are prevented from forcing staff to work excessive hours by mandatory safeguards. By removing these, the proposed contract will stretch staff and services to unsafe levels. Changes to contract conditions will impact hardest on doctors who work most nights and weekends, the ones who already provide a world-class 7-day National Health Service.
I've been a junior doctor for 10 years. I'm currently working in cancer research. I've taken 5 years out of my NHS training to do this, whilst raising 2 kids, a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old.
Vital research into conditions like cancer and dementia will suffer as doctors are financially penalised for undertaking scientific training.
People are already demoralised. People are already working at the limits of what they can do in a lot of areas of the NHS, particularly places like A&E and general practice. If we're asking them to work more with less resources and less support, it's going to fall apart.
When children are unwell, it's unpredictable. They can come in unwell at any time. I know that when I work out of hours, it's hard. It's really hard. If these changes to that contract go through, my worry is that the safeguards won't be in place to prevent us from working too many of these hours.
We have tired doctors, overworked doctors and demoralised doctors. That leads to an increased chance of mistakes being made. And we're human, we make mistakes, and you want to minimise the environment in which we're able to make mistakes.
It'll become a danger because the doctors will be overtired. Trying to squeeze more out of us is not going to work.
Shockingly, the terms of the contract are not up for negotiation. Doctors were issued with an ultimatum: accept the terms or we will impose them on you anyway. The government aren't listening to the concerns of the country's leading medical authorities. They aren't listening to the Welsh and Scottish governments that have refused to implement the contract. They aren't even listening to their own MPs who oppose it.
They don't understand that the NHS will not work unless there are junior doctors doing the work.
I think there's a lot of people that are highly dedicated and have a very strong sense of vocation that they may say these changes are the tipping point to say, I can't do this anymore. And I think to have got to that stage is a very sorry state of affairs.
The new contract for me potentially is the end of my career. I have a 4-year-old daughter. She said, Mummy, I've made up my mind. I really want to be a doctor now. And my voice is breaking now because the NHS at the moment is not a happy place, and I would worry about her future.
I qualified in July 1948, and that was the very month the health service came in. It's my life. I'm very proud of it. It's a wonderful system. and I'm very disturbed at what I'm seeing now.
If it wasn't for the junior doctors of our NHS, I wouldn't be here today, I would have been dead. I think if the government has its way, it will destroy the NHS as we know it.
All we can do is try and fight and try and raise people's awareness that this contract isn't fair and it certainly isn't safe for the patients that we look after.
New contracts make us feel like the Department of Health don't care about the work that we do. But the work that we do is caring for patients. It's the front line. And taking away the morale and the goodwill that exists at that front line is going to hurt patients on a daily basis.
The Doctors' Union, the BMA, is simply asking for a chance to negotiate this contract fairly, without preconditions. A chance they are not being given. So doctors are uniting to stop a dangerous contract that will be damaging for patients, damaging for doctors, and damaging for the NHS.
I've just finished a night shift working with an amazing team treating and retrieving critically ill children. I'm sick and tired of being made to feel that what I do isn't worth anything. I'm sick and tired of the spin being peddled by this government to systematically destroy the NHS that we love. I've not been misled by the BMA, and I will stand with my colleagues.
We're all human and we all want the same thing. If we have an accident or our health lets us down, we want to know that we're going to be seen by staff that are at the top of their game who are just going to make us feel better. And these contracts jeopardise that, and that's why we're fighting for this. But we need your help, we need the public support, and we need you behind us. Please support this campaign to save the NHS.
We are your junior doctors. This is your NHS. This is everybody's fight.
Please, click here to sign the petition. You can also upload your photos and videos of support using hashtag NHSSelfie and hashtag JuniorContract. For more information, visit the website. Thank you.
This is where junior doctors were in 2015 and 2016. A 98% mandate, huge public support, and an objectively unsafe and unfair contract being imposed, or the threat of it being imposed.
I just created a Wix website for my business. Wish I knew how I did it. Let's go to Wix.com. I can add anything you want.
Anyway, I'd like to introduce our panel. So, on my far right is Dr. Amar Mashru. He is responsible for that excellent video. He is an emergency medicine A&E registrar, but he's also part of Justice for Health, and they were the group of junior doctors that crowdfunded a judicial review to challenge and explore the legality of whether or not the junior doctor contract could be imposed. To my right here is Dr. Aislinn Mackin-Doherty. She is an oncology registrar. She would say she wasn't politically active until the junior doctor dispute, when she realised what Jeremy Hunt was doing to junior doctors and his plans for the NHS. And I think it's fair to say she's been politically active ever since, writing in The Guardian, and she's now General Secretary of Health Campaigns Together, building on unity in the campaign movement for those that care and want to protect the NHS. To my left, I've already introduced Dr. Cicely Cunningham. She's a cancer doctor and is part of this new organisation, Doctors Association, which is looking to lobby and campaign on behalf of junior doctors, the issues that matter. All doctors. To my left is Dr. Moosa Qureshi. He's a haematologist and he has doing a PhD in cancer research. I think it's fair to say he's passionate about blood, but he's passionate about other things. He's an activist and campaigner for junior doctors. He's campaigned for whistleblowing protection to help me. He's campaigned for Team Hadiza, and he's been very vocal of his criticism of the BMA. But now, in recent months, has decided if he can't beat them, to join them. He's been elected on BMA Council as part of the very successful Doctors for Progress slate. He has asked me to tell you that anything he says today is not reflective of his new organisation. He said in an entirely personal capacity, which is brilliant. We'll find out what he really thinks. Now, I'd like... my role is to keep the peace. So I'm going to start with a question, and then if I can, I'll take questions from the audience. Please, can I say just questions, please? I'm sure you know what I mean. Adam Kay thinks that junior doctors were drowned out. Their message was drowned out. What do we think about that? Dr. Mashru, what do you think?
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, well, I wonder if actually maybe the first part of that answer kind of reflects something that just I had a chance to think about watching that film. So that was, I haven't watched that maybe for over a year, and I made it with the help of a huge number of people completely voluntarily about 3 years ago, which is done 3 years ago. And you know, you kind of think, maybe would I have let Matt say I've been misled by my union and put that in the video? Maybe on reflection, maybe not. Maybe that's part of the problem. I think that those July negotiations were the big turning point, I think, for me. Thinking about where the tone and the support really changed. I think junior doctors at that point, until that point, had a magnanimous leader that they were behind. There was a lot of I stand with Johan, a lot of unity, a lot of people moving in the same direction. July negotiations, suddenly it came out where Johan saying he supported the new contract in a personal capacity. That's the line they just made you say, of everything he said once you joined the BMA. That's what he came out with that. And some people then really got into the depths of it, and started saying, actually, how is this contract going to affect me? And then when you got down into that, it broke a lot of people apart into some people who were for it, some people who hadn't really understood it, didn't really understand where the movement was going anymore, and some people who were completely still obviously opposed to it. And that was then followed by an announcement of quite 5 days of strikes. And I think from that point, as soon as you kind of lost the big movement of unity from the junior doctors, it made it very difficult for the public to understand what was going on anymore, if they were able to in the first place, and it made it very, very easy then for the government to just push things through. So for me, on personal reflection, that would be the big turning point.
Thank you. Dr. Qureshi, did they lose it? Why did they lose it? They had a 98% mandate, loads of public support. Why did the BMA let the contract be imposed?
Thank you, Chris. Tim Johnson will tell you I'm always very careful what I say, and I have to, whatever I say is definitely not official BMA line. I need to say that every time I speak in that thing. I think the real question isn't were our voices drowned out, but who drowned out our voices? And there are so many instances where the organisations that are actually supposed to be defending the medical profession have failed to score open goals. So Chris Day's case, I'm not going to speak too much about it because I've been spending about half my life talking about it for the last 3 years. That was a failure to score an open goal. It was not a difficult case, as he said. He won it in less than an hour when he actually turned up at the tribunal with some proper representation from a good barrister. The Bauer case, myself and Chris Day, we opened an email sent by the consultants who had been supporting Haditha Bauer for the last few years, and we read it, and within about 10 minutes we were on the phone to each other saying, this is a phenomenal injustice. And I'll tell you the story. We were both at work. Chris was doing an A&E shift. So Chris was, obviously he has contacts within Crowd Justice, but within about a couple of days we had the Crowd Justice Fund set up. We were then advertising on social media. I think on the Wednesday we found out about it, on the Friday we started crowdfunding. On the Monday we had collected over £200,000, and we were both in the office of the GMC head, Charlie Massey, and discussing with him how they're going to right this injustice. Leicester Royal Infirmary is one of the largest NHS trusts in the country. I cannot believe that all of our royal colleges and our unions and our defence organisations did not know that a doctor had been unjustly convicted of gross negligence manslaughter for the last 4 or 5 years, and nobody did anything about it. And these are organisations with huge resources. We're just a few junior doctors, and what did we manage to do in the trial? So I really echo also what Chris said. I think junior doctors and all of us are actually much more powerful than we think we are. If you actually stand up and take some action, you don't have to be great in numbers. And particularly, really, really congratulate Julia for setting up the Crowd Justice website, because it has completely changed the balance of power. But until we all stand up and take action, nothing will change, and we cannot rely on those in authority in the medical establishment to do this. The other thing I'd say, just very briefly, I'm sorry, I know I've spoken quite some time, but we need to follow the money. We have a situation at the moment where we have a National Healthcare Leadership Conference every year, and the gold sponsor of that conference is Optum. Optum Healthcare is a front company for United Healthcare. United Healthcare is the biggest private corporation in the United States. One of its former senior executives is now the chief executive of NHS England. It's absolutely clear what is happening. Thank you.
The last comment, and then we'll take an audience question. But Aislinn, what do you think about what Moosa's just said? Is there more to the junior doctor dispute? Is it part of a wider context in the public sector, or was it just the junior doctors they were after?
Well, it's absolutely more than just about junior doctors, and I think the whole dispute actually represents something very critical about what is happening in society. Because what we have, 10 years now after one of the biggest global financial crises in history, is you've got increasingly an attack on the services in society that don't make any money, that are there for the public good and the public interest. And you've got a corporatised political elite, very much represented by the Conservative Party and the associated corporate lobbyists within, who are ideologically opposed to public services. They always have been. If you look throughout history, they always have been. They always constrict public services. This is what the junior doctors dispute was about. And it's very important to put that in the wider societal context, because then it makes sense why not just junior doctors were on strike, but teachers were on strike, and midwives were on strike, and porters were on strike, and cleaners were on strike, train drivers on strike. These are the people that are providing services to the general public. They are not working in banks, they are not working in the financial sector, they are not working in big market industries. So what you've got is an attack in general on public services. As a junior doctor for the last 10 years, I have felt the physical force of that attack. I have watched the NHS get constricted. I have watched parts get transferred to the private sector. I have watched KPMG management consultants come in and tell my colleagues how and when to discharge patients. I am watching it happening. So when Jeremy Hunt, who collaborates with Simon Stevens, who's the ex-head of the global sector of United Health, an insurance company, when they come out and say, you're not working hard enough, you need to do it for even less, even though you have had a 25% pay cut in the last 8 years, it is ideologically driven. It is not evidence-based. It is policy making through an ideological opposition to public service. So yes, I think the attack on junior doctors was part of a wider attack on the NHS, and I think it was part of a wider attack on public services in general.
Has anyone got a question? But I'm going to be strict as a chair. Just a question, please. Okay, that gentleman.
I have just two their actual questions. The junior doctor contract, this dispute, I was in F1 when it happened, and I was at that protest which was on the thing, and I was striking outside the hospital as well. Why did we not lay blame to who was actually at fault? Why was it the government? It was the Conservative Party and it was the Conservative policy, and it is, I'm sorry, I'm going to be divisive here. When Labour messed up with Iraq, all Labour had the fault laid at their feet. when the Conservative Party attacked the NHS directly, they almost got away with it. It was David Cameron, it was Jeremy Hunt, it's Theresa May, they are Conservatives. Why are we not laying the blame at the Conservative Party? It has to be, I know it's going to be divisive, but it is the Conservative Party that is attacking the NHS. It's the Conservative Party that's attacking junior doctors. And look at the bill that is put through with the nurses and their agenda for change, and they've set a 4% pay rise for them, actually it's £200 per year increase for some of the nurses that have been working in our NHS. So that's the first thing I wanted to do. Why are we not saying it's the Conservative Party? And the second thing was when it came to, I shall leave it for that now.
Moosa, would you like to answer that?
I'll try and be quite brief, because I took a lot of time last time. I mean, some of us are more ideological than others on this panel. I don't actually believe this is a Conservative Party problem. I believe this is actually a massive corporate problem. And it's been going on, it's been planned, it's been going on for the last 30 years. You're shaking your head, but we know for a fact that the new Labour Party under Tony Blair, actually Simon Stevens actually came to fruition and came to the forefront under Tony Blair's administration. And they did a huge amount of damage with privatisation during the Labour Party control over government. So this is not a party political thing. At least for me, it's not. For me, firstly, it's about patients and what's good for patients. And the reason I'm opposed to privatisation is not because I'm ideologically opposed to it, but simply because I believe it has worse outcome for patients. And it is not a party that is in charge of this country anymore. It is a corporate sector problem.
Just to give a bit of context, my name's Rob Quick and I'm a national officer with the HCSA, and we're in touch with a number of people on social media. HCSA is the other doctors' union, and some people don't know about the Hospital Consultants Specialist Association. I want to ask a question about unity and solidarity across the profession. So I've spent 25 years as a full-time union official with Unison. I was originally a nurse, and I've worked as a HR director of the NHS, don't throw things at me. For the last 4 years, I've worked for HCSA, and I've been supporting doctors who are whistleblowers, who are being taken through the shittiest disciplinary procedures going because they try to speak out about failures in heart surgery, about rationing, and about everything going on in the NHS. And I'm here with a colleague, Farah Chima, who's one of our junior doctor coordinators as well. And we want to work closely with the BMA and Doctors in Unite to make sure the profession has that solidarity across the profession. And I've asked people on the panel today, do you not share that view about solidarity and unity of purpose?
Okay, so maybe what are the problems with the unity of the trade union movement in health? Cicely, would you like to take that one?
I feel very underqualified to be on this panel right now. So I'm a proud member of the HCSA. I joined recently. I think there is an issue, but I am not. I'm not someone who knows a lot about the workings of the unions. The BMA, the Doctors Association UK is neither pro nor anti the BMA, nor are we trying to replace it and become another union, much to some people's disgust. I do think we should always, so we talked about, Moosa was talking about some people being more ideological and some people less. I'm very much a pragmatist. I was actually a civil servant in a past life before I did medicine, and I think you just have to talk to everyone, and everyone's a human. And I was actually having a conversation with someone with my college's 20-year reunion, and it was a guy who was very senior in the BBC, and he said, you know, it's like realising that your mum or dad is grumpy because they've had a bad day. They are just a person. And I think that's something that I have been encouraged in my education and my life to be able to say, oh, I'm a person of equal value, and I know some people don't feel like that. I'm going from tangents. But essentially, I think we should all be talking together, and you can always find common ground in working with people. We have to, and I think that goes across political parties as well. People have very strong political views, but I think we have to be looking at what is best for patients, building an evidence base of what is best for patients, and how can we implement that.
I just wanted to develop that question. Can a trade union represent junior doctors and senior managers? Is that possible? The BMA tries to do junior doctors, medical directors and senior consultants. Is it possible?
Me.
Well, history shows that it isn't.
There we go. Oh, nice. I don't know. One thing I would say, I mean, in response to that is, you know, I can empathise with colleagues. Obviously, I feel politically that I'm aware, and I've developed my own kind of feelings on issues of healthcare in the NHS. But I do empathise, because there is a dichotomy there. You know, you say you go into medicine and you feel proud to work for the NHS because it doesn't discriminate. It just deals with anybody on a clinical ground as they walk through the door, and you don't really ask any more questions. And yet at the same time, you're asking those same people to form very, very strong political views about how they feel certain things should be run or which political party they should support. So I do empathise with the difficulty that some people have on it. But I think it's a great point from Cicely. I think if you could convince people and you could tell people, so from a union point of view, if you are trying to unite people, you develop this evidence-based, look, actually, this is the model, this is why we're saying that the NHS is the right way to deliver healthcare, because this is the model that delivers healthcare best, and delivers it equitably, and delivers it with better healthcare outcomes for the entirety of society. If you start to promote the NHS in that kind of context, maybe it will be a lot easier, potentially, for clinicians and people who aren't necessarily wanting to feel or let themselves become politically motivated, and managers sing from the same hymn sheet, but actually what they're doing is just good evidence-based care.
Last question.
So obviously there's been the events when junior doctors getting hurt, and as Advocate was saying, what needs to be done is for people to speak out more. And obviously we've got great things, Julia's crowdfunding and Association UK. Do you guys think there's something else that needs to be done to help junior doctors be heard?
I think they need to link up with the public, the people with whom their interests directly align, because at the end of the day, doctors are patients too, and as everyone seems to agree on, we're all human, and we all want the same thing. Well, the majority of people do. And what I would say about representation, whether it's a union or whether it's a Royal College, I would agree with a gentleman in the audience earlier who described a pyramid. What we see often in these organisations is the further up the ladder of power you get, the further away you get from representing the people on the bottom, the majority. Survey after survey, kind of opinion piece, poll after poll, show that the public overwhelmingly wants universal healthcare free at the point of use. We do not need a public conversation. This public conversation has been had for 70 years. It has been answered time and time again. The problem is the answer does not fit with what HSBC, what PwC, what United Health, what Optum would like the answer to be, because it is not profitable. Therefore, there has been an insidious process to try and marketise successfully the NHS over many, many years. And it's not been explained to the public, and it's not being done democratically, hence why you have lawsuits like Professor Alison Pollock and like many of the teams here have brought, that are trying to expose what is happening through obfuscation, through legal jargon, through political cover-ups, basically. And this is just a description of what is happening. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is happening to the NHS, and it has already happened over many, many years. So my response to what we should do about it is that doctors need to link up with nurses, with midwives, with the porters, with the cleaners, and with the general public, because all of our interests generally align along the same principle that we would like high quality healthcare for every single person that we love and ourselves, healthcare that we've paid for through our whole lives, through general taxation, and that we deserve as human beings. And I think the vast majority of people would agree on that. And if there's enough people clamouring about that and saying it together and not being siphoned off into little groups, we would overwhelmingly win that argument.
That's a good place to end. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, so I'd like to thank our panel. I'd like to hand over to Tim now for some closing words.
Thanks, Chris. I've really got nothing to add. I think we finished with a question hanging in the air, whether it's the People's Front of Judea that needs to be warned, or whether it's communicating with each other on social media, or whether it's funding cases. I don't know. But I'm glad to say that we have recorded this evening. I'd been amazed, actually, really, right from the start, from Adam onwards, by the quality of the debate and the openness people have shown to discussing what really matters to them. So I'm glad to say that we've got it all bottled up. I'm looking at the camera forward, smiling back. And so if you want, we can let you have a link to the video. And it's been live streamed as well, I believe, on the Doctors Association Facebook page. So thank you again for coming. Thanks very much for the contributions. Thanks for Chris for taking over the management of the large chunk of it, and for Julia too, for providing a legal perspective that was a useful thing. So with that, thanks and good evening.